Hey, everybody. It's Scott from the LABiz podcast brought to you by Save Our Shops Louisiana, where the mission is to acquire local businesses and keep Louisiana businesses in Louisiana hands. So, before we get started tonight, for episode 12 of the podcast, the Owners and Operators series, um, it tonight, the name of it is "We Have a Deal." So I'm excited to announce that we've had a signed LOI returned to us, and we're going to go through that tonight and talk a little bit more. Um, but before we get into that, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you catch future episodes. Track my progress. It's free, and you're already here. So don't miss out while we talk about saving local businesses, preserving Louisiana legacy, and helping the next generation step into ownership right here in Louisiana. So, in a previous episode, I mentioned that I had a letter of intent out, actually, two of them. One seller did contact me. They went with a higher offer, which is part of the game. And I'm happy for them. I hope that the new buyer and the business stays right here in Louisiana. Those jobs stay here. The revenue, taxes, and the business stays alive and well in the community. The second offer that I sent was accepted. So we are now officially entering the next phase, which is due diligence. And today I want to walk you through what that actually means and how these deals are structured and why due diligence is so critical from a financial and human capital standpoint. But certainly not the sexiest part of a deal. Uh, that part starts with the LOIs I've mentioned on a previous episode. But let's talk about that, talk about the structure of the deal. Again, no specifics. I am under an NDA, but I can talk about the framework. So, most small businesses fit this same framework. Most small business acquisitions, especially in the range that I'm seeking, between a million and 3 million, and they follow a similar pattern. First, it's an asset purchase. So, as opposed to buying the stock or the actual business as it is incorporated today, no matter what structure that is, I'm buying the assets of the business and creating a new company that will continue to do business as the same name as the old company. This ensures that I acquire the assets and not the debt of the business, if should there be any. Should there be any now or in the future, which is the more important part. It is an SBA backed financed deal, which we'll be digging into a little bit more as I talk about the due diligence process. There is an equity injection by myself, and then there's also an equity injection or a seller note, which is called on standby, meaning the seller doesn't get that portion until later in the deal. Then there's working capital. And in this particular deal, the structure includes real estate as well. So, um, again, pretty standard deal in terms of size, and then the structure that I offered in my LOI. And this structure is extremely common because it keeps the deal bankable. So for underwriting, from a bank's perspective, and doing loans, it reduces the risk for them, and it aligns incentives between myself and the seller. And if anyone out there is thinking about buying or selling a business, the SBA wants to see that the business can support the debt. They want to see the seller still has some skin in the game, to make sure that the transition goes well, that they're not lying about things or it's going to cost them money in the end. And they want the buyer to have some skin in the game, of course. And then the real estate, if it's included, they want it to appraise at the value. And the LOI lays all that out in the structure. But the real test comes next, and that's due diligence. That's the real work of making a deal work. I just made that up. We're going to stick with that one. But once the LOI is signed, the seller opens the books and I get to dig inside of them. this is where I'm going to verify everything that I'm thinking about, uh, that everything that I offered to buy, and make sure that that is all of value. As uh, many people have said, famous people have said, trust but verify. And that's really what this is all about. I sent over a full due diligence checklist. So this is a checklist I created myself. And I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. Again, if you are interested in buying or selling a business, um, then you can reach out to me. I'm happy to share these things with you. I'm not dealing in any trade secrets here, or anything of that nature. Um, and um, a checklist like this. Oop, I just shared myself over and over. A checklist like this just takes a little bit of time to create, but if it's already created, why reinvent the wheel, right? All right, so let's try this again here. All right, there we go. We'll start on page one. Okay, this particular checklist has about 118 items on it. Again, it's not very sexy. This is not the sexiest part of the deal. Uh, the this is the verify the information that I've been told, in order to make sure that uh, what I'm offering is the value is actually there. So as we go through this list, it's about understanding that. What would be the worst thing that could happen? Well, the worst thing that could happen would be some type of red flag comes up, and um, some information that I thought about the business proves to be incorrect. And then we have a choice to make. Either we can step back from the deal and start a process over again with another potential business, or we can make a new offer. And same thing applies for the seller. Maybe while we're going through the due diligence process, he's digging out some old financial records and finds a pot of gold and wants more for it, right? So um, this is where everything gets dug into. So let's take a look at the sheet here. This is a little dashboard. Again, I mentioned 118 items in total. Some of those are uh, the buyer, myself, be responsible for producing and doing certain things. The seller be responsible for doing and producing certain things. We'll share those things, so that there's no hidden surprises later. And it's broken into a few different categories: financial statements and records. That's the tax records. It's all part of financial due diligence. Legal and corporate documents, real estate type documents, licensing, permits, insurance. Particularly if you're looking at businesses that have some type of requirement, like a gas station or a restaurant, you have certain different licenses and permits and insurance that you would have to get for those types of businesses. Operations and equipment, and then the employee and human resources part. And as I mentioned, going back real quick to the letter of intent, uh, the tone of the letter of intent for a potential seller, I believe, is very critical. They have to know that you aren't going to come in and destroy something that they've worked so hard for. This business that accepted my letter. It's been in the community for 20 years. It's the people are ingrained in the community. The community knows them, and we want to make sure that that business continues another 20 years, and at least, and continues to contribute to the community in the way it has historically, potentially grow that. And that really is the goal of keeping that business, its employees, and its revenue here in the area. So um, then we have our actual checklist items, as I mentioned: financial statements and records. This is part of the financial due diligence. We're going to look at the profit and loss. We're going to look at the balance sheets, the cash flow, tax returns, accounts receivables, accounts payables, to understand how money's flowing in and out of the business. We'll create or review debt schedules if they don't already exist. They will, as this will be an SBA backed loan, so therefore then there will be debt on the business. Revenue trends, is it a seasonal business, a cyclical business where maybe it's a big summertime business, but not so much in the winter, right? You need to understand those trends in order to maintain solid cash flow throughout the year. Well, gross margins, capital expenditures, again, validating the story that the numbers tell. Um, Verifying things like, does the cash flow support the purchase price? Is the revenue stable? Are margins consistent, either cyclically or month to month? Are there any surprises hiding um, in the various expense buckets uh, that have been provided to me to this point, or something that might throw off expectations around the offer that I have made? Then we have legal and corporate documents. We want to confirm uh, the business is what the buyer says it is. Um, uh, oh, and I've skipped over tax records, kind of, but tax records part of that financial due diligence. We want 3 years of federal returns, um, both um, from the business as well as the personal returns from the seller. Then payroll tax filings, any IRS will do a lien search, that type of thing, to make sure that the business doesn't owe anything that would surprise us later. Then there's the legal and corporate documents, the articles of incorporation of the business, bylaws, the ownership structure. Make sure that we know that we're dealing with the right person when it comes to our offer and getting out um, the the or making the deal. That the company's in good standing. Is there any litigation, any liens, any UCC tax filings, property filings on the real estate, that type of thing? And in this case, again, the deal does include real estate, so we need to do an appraisal. We need to have environmental checks run, or environmental site assessment, survey, title search, zoning compliance, property taxes. Make sure they're up to speed. Um, Flood zone determination, is insurance required? Those types of things. The real estate can really make or break an SBA backed deal, and the appraisal again has to support the price. Um, in order to make sure that the lender is protected, as well as to make sure that the deal is protected. So uh, then we get into several other things. I mentioned licensing, permits, insurance. Talked a little bit about that. Operations and equipment. You want to understand. You, I want to understand how the business actually runs, the equipment that they use, vehicles, that titles are secure, maintenance logs, are the vehicles being cared for? Is all the equipment being cared for, um, as I would expect? Supplier agreements, subcontractor agreements, backlog, what work is in progress, what's pending, uh, any promises, warranty obligations, pending contracts, safety records. This will tell me whether or not the business is healthy operationally and not just financially. This is also a good time to start looking at ways to quickly make an impact on the business, to improve profitability, to potentially improve sales, um, but really start looking at the way that the business operates. Is there a written manual? Is there, an employee guide? Those types of things. So uh, this is an important part and of the due diligence process, and hopefully we'll start to stoke some of those creative fires in how to best grow the business. Um, Employees and human resources uh, uh, diligence. So, an employee roster, of course, understanding that the people are the heart of the business. I want to make sure that throughout this transition, that they're cared for, that they feel like they were cared for. Whether they're aware or not at the moment is really up to the seller. it's not up to me to go in and try and make sure that the employees are cared for. That doesn't happen until the deal is done, right? So, um, but working out with the seller during the process when that transition is going to happen is an important part of this. Uh, Employee compensation and benefits, what do those look like? 1099 contractors, if there are any, what does that look like in terms of structure and cost? Uh, Human resource policies, is there a policy manual? Do the employees understand what to expect when they come to work every day? Workers' comp, is there open claims history? Um, Key employee retention risks. So let's just say, you know, when you buy a business that has employees, you're not just buying the brick and mortar of the business, you're buying a team, you're inheriting a team. And how are they going to feel about me? How is that transition going to work? Are they going to want to stay and continue to help grow the business? Um, and, what are the risks there? Are there multiple employees that are already have 20 years in and are considering retirement that might decide to leave sooner rather than later. So again, we want to take all those things and understand them. May not be able to influence them. Hopefully, by understanding them, I can influence them, but at least understand them to know what it is I'm getting into um, as we go through this acquisition process. Yeah. Customers and sales is another important section. So, customers and sales. I want to know who the top 10 or 20 customers are. Um, Especially repeat customers, repeat buyers, if they exist, right? Whether revenue is concentrated in one area versus another, in one revenue stream versus another, and what that mix is, what contracts are active in process, what the sales pipeline looks like, how's that pipeline work, how do they get more business, how do they get their leads, how much does it cost to close a deal? Um, because beyond the cost of goods sold, that's already been provided. Are there additional costs that go with that? Um, if they generate a lot of sales online, what is the reputation online? Well, either way, whether they're generating sales or not, but what is the reputation of the business in comment sections on blogs, in their own website, or again, whatever source might be. If you're looking at buying a restaurant, you'd want to know, do they have a good DoorDash rating? What is their score on Yelp? Right. So looking into various um, places that would rate this type of business, and understanding what that is, doing the research, all part of this process. Is if customer concentration is a big one, for example, and one customer is a large percentage of the revenue, 30, 40, 50% of the revenue, that introduces a different type of risk. What if they decide to go elsewhere, right? So then everything that I have used to create the offer model no longer holds water, right? So we've got to look through those things. Um, Vendor and suppliers, right? So um, who are their top vendors, who are the suppliers, um, if that's a critical part of the business, how much of it is the business, how solid are those agreements, what are the contract terms, can they be negotiated, how long are the terms, etc. um, environmental and regulatory compliance. Mentioned some of those things a little bit ago as well, but hazardous material, if there is any, um, permits, inspections, building codes, or is there any violations historically, things that need to be dealt with that have been pending, um, erosion control, that kind of a thing. Then there's technology and intellectual property. So website domain, social media accounts, um, uh, any software or licensing that they use in the daily operations of their business that need to be transferred to the new owner, or Still got to get all the login information, right? Those types of things, all part of the process. If there's any trademarks, uh, that type of intellectual property needs to be transferred or and understood again. In order at this point, it needs to be understood while we're evaluating the deal. And then there's the SBA specific requirements, right? So they'll want financial statements and the tax returns, business plan, projections, um, uh, free cash flow calculations, eligibility verification for me, um, the the exact terms of the deal and the offer. So a transition plan, a business plan, pro forma P&L, those types of things will all be required by the SBA lender prior to signing off on the deal and then finishing a deal. And of course, all of that is actually on me, as we say, the buyer, in order to make that happen and get those things started. So it's a lot, 118 items, but listen, if you're out there and you're watching this and you've gone through this before, I'd love for your advice. Is there something that you could think of that you say, man, Scott, you got to make sure you check into this as well, or make sure you check on that? Leave a comment, let me know because this is my first time. What's up, Gary? See a little comment there from Gary Shelton. Welcome. And so again, if you've done this, if you're an M&A expert, maybe your brother-in-law is, reach out to him, share my info, share the channel. Love to be able to talk to him. You know, um, we want to make sure that the deal goes smoothly. I want to make sure that uh, it happens at the best that it possibly can happen. Um, and so, I'm here. Um, Sharing with you all the process that I'm going through. So don't forget to like, share, comment. How you like how I worked that in there? All right. And um, so what's next? Right? Where am I in the process? Um, right now, in the middle of collecting all of these documents as part of due diligence. We'll review the documents, validate the documents, work through the SBA requirements with the lender. Um, yes, it's a lot of work, but it's also very exciting. And I hope you get excited about it too in seeing the process unfold through this channel. And um, man, I mean, this is really where we learn whether or not the business is the right fit for me. Um, which I probably wouldn't have made the offer if I didn't already think it was. This is really verifying that it is. So, um, if you're thinking about buying a business or you're a Louisiana owner thinking about selling a business, understanding the LOI and the due diligence is essential, right? So w- this is how you protect your legacy. This is how you protect your money and your future as a potential seller. And I'll share more as I'm able without breaking confidentiality. I'm hoping that once we get to a certain point in the process, that I'll be able to talk to the seller and the current owner and say, hey, this is what I've got going on. I'd love for you to come on. I'd love for you to share with my subscribers and followers on social media. Um, to share the process with them. And I do want to thank everybody out there on social media. Um, you know, we've been averaging about 15 to 2,000 views a week now on social media. You know, need you guys to come over to the channel and subscribe. It is free to you, right? And it means a lot to support um, uh, of the mission. So. Um, that's it. That's what I got. That's episode 12. We have a deal. Thanks for listening. And as always, you can find more resources and unique Louisiana gear at soslouisiana.com. Oh, and one more pitch. You stayed this long, so hit that subscribe button and share this with your network. Leave a comment about your favorite local business, and I'll give them a shout out on the next podcast. I'll even try and reach out to them to see if they would be interested in appearing on the podcast. which is where I'm hoping our next episode is. And we do have a couple of owners that have agreed to come on to the podcast, and can't wait to get that next episode rolling. In the meantime, if you haven't watched the new series that's out, Small Towns, Big Louisiana Hearts, we released that episode, dropped that episode last week in from Natchitoches, Louisiana. It was a great episode, um, and I think you really enjoy it. So, um, anyway, we'll see y'all next week.